on with this?
Testing.
John, can you hear me now? Turn it off. How about now, John? Okay, great. So the conference call speaker we have, it amplifies the noise from far away, and it is a noise canceling. So usually it works pretty well in a space this big. I will say that if any of you have comments or questions, I will probably repeat them or have someone closer to a microphone repeat them so that everyone online can hear it as well. Great. Well, with that, we'll get started. So our agenda is up on the board, and I'll start with a couple of details about what we've been up to. So 2021 has been an interesting year because we're just now getting with Delta variant and all of COVID ups and downs and hopes and dreams and stopping and starting. We are going back to in-person meetings, as you can see here. We're also getting back to some of the more fun things that have been done in the neighborhood in the past. Our membership continues to be very strong, and that's something we'll hear more about in the treasurer's report. We've done some investments over the past year in our community properties, and those investments were approved in last year's budget and have been talked about at monthly meetings along the way, but I'll share a little bit more about that as we move through. So 2021 challenges. What's a challenge for us right now and what might be for next year as well? Our landscaping costs are increasing because we deferred some maintenance for a couple of years while our budget situation was a little bit tighter than it is right now. And it turns out that this is the kind of work that volunteers can't do to just substitute. So we have some challenges with how we increase the amount of our budget that goes toward managing the landscaping on our common properties. And then obviously it continues to be top of mind how we do community events and get together and share with each other in a COVID conscious and safe way for everyone. So that is something we're conscious of. And then the road ahead for the rest of 2021 and 2022 is continuing to maintain a strong budget position and in adding to our rainy day fund so that we don't get in another situation in the future where we have to do deferred maintenance on some of our properties. And then we'll talk about upcoming community events. So the treasurer's report, I should say that, actually, you know what, I'll back up. I want to make sure the board introduces themselves because we have 3 new members that you probably haven't all met before, and 2 members who've been on for a couple of years, but were not able to join us in person tonight. So Bo is not able to join us in person. He's out of the country with work. And Lauren is at home, and John is at home, and John's our treasurer. so I'm going to let him speak. Probably, if the audio works, he can talk to the treasurer's report, or I will if he can't. We talk about it earlier today. But everyone else here at the table, please say hi, your name, and what street you live on, just so that everybody here knows who you are. Okay?
Frank Garcia, I live on Ludlow, and I've been on board a couple of years. And I principally kind of help behind the scenes with groundskeeping and those types of projects. Don't forget Mark.
I won't.
Liz Eulinger, I live on Nimitz Drive, my first year on the board. Hi, I'm Kat Marucci. I live on Williams Drive, and I'm brand new to the board, and one of my main focuses is getting representation and really focusing on the water quality and so. What do you say about that?
Good evening, I'm Scott Gibson. I live on Williams Drive and I'm a past president of the Federal Heights Improvement Association. I focus primarily on community property issues and trying to get us to a place where we build a rainy day fund for future big maintenance projects.
My name's Maggie Rogers and I live on Nimitz, and I wish I had something really major to say like everybody else, but I mainly argue with
Important role. And I'd also like to give a chance to recognize Cindy Radulovich in the back and Martha Thorne. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much behind the scenes to keep things running in the record, keeping minutes and notes taking, etc. And they're wonderful to work with. And then Tanya McGinnis is helping with the Zoom call back there, so she's not at the front. I think I got everybody. Anyway, so I'm just thrilled to be able to work with this group because they represent some of the best of community service, and they're just fun. They're fun people. So I'm really glad to be here with them. John, would you like to make a few comments about the treasurer's report?
Sure. Can you hear me?
You can hear, can you turn the volume all the way up on the speaker? It's actually a plus sign on the top of the speaker. Try again, John.
Okay. You can hear me now? Yeah.
You can hear it. It's quiet.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I can't be there with you in person. I guess we don't have the actual profit and loss on the Zoom, do we? Or no?
I don't think we can get the volume that we need.
Okay. On the screen. That's fine. Not a big deal. So you can see on the screen there, our membership is doing better. It's tracking closer to our better case budget. We're a little bit down from last year. Last year, I think we closed at about 280 members. Right now, we're around 260. So that's somewhere around 40% of the neighborhood, which is decent for us. But obviously, we'd still like it to be higher if we could.
Just a second, John.
Okay. Sorry.
So yeah, John was just saying that we're at about 240 members right now, down from 260. And so there's still time in the rest of this calendar year to get up to the same level we were at last year. But what membership we have right now represents about 40% of the neighborhood. Go ahead, John.
Okay, keep going. So our expenses are still, well, I guess a lot of things have ended up being somewhat flat over last year. Our social costs obviously are down because we haven't done a whole lot because of COVID, the ongoing COVID pandemic. But our property expenses, I think Siobhan mentioned this at the beginning, our property expenses have gone up. Some of that is just because things are more expensive. But some of it is a couple of large scale improvements that needed to be done and reinvesting in our properties. So we redecked the Dewey Dock, which hopefully you have all gone down and seen that at some point. We also redid the Porter Circle to make it a little easier to maintain and lower some of the maintenance costs and the need for volunteers there. And we also have a couple other projects in the works to help us improve some of our landscaping, especially at the entrance to on Cedar Park. When you come in, there's that sign in the little park area there. So like I said, we're in pretty good shape. We're following our better case scenario, and the last 2 years we've had pretty good membership. So thank you all for supporting AHIA, and we hope you'll continue to do so in the future.
Thank you, John. John walked through a couple of things that are here on this under expenses, but our social costs still being down due to COVID, and then some of our expenses are up based on renovations on our community properties. And we have a few more things planned for the entrance at Cedar Park. So, John, I really appreciate you in everything you do, managing finances and keeping us on track. Thank you for that. Okay, so we will move ahead now to the property updates. And Bo can't be with us, and Tanya, it's up to you if you want to mention anything here. Otherwise, I'm just going to walk through the, yeah, okay. Walk through a couple of the highlights. So many of you know that last year, the budget approved a redecking of the Dewey Dock down at AHIA Park. That infrastructure was 17 years old and it needed to be redecked. And so the project involved removing the top deck pieces and then actually recovering all the stringer boards so that they would be protected in the future and last longer, and then redecking the top of it. And that was done earlier in the spring. We were really fortunate with the contractor. He was able to slide us in because it was a small project in between a couple of other ones, so we didn't have to wait all summer. And we got the nice new deck on earlier in the spring than we had initially thought that we would, which was really great. And then, okay. And then we have done a lot with wood chips this year, and we have more yet to do. So we've actually done 2 different layers of wood chips in the last year down at Dewey Dock under the kayak racks and at the bottom of the walkway to try to improve the footing. That relies a lot on volunteer work and volunteer labor and the efforts of Joe and Grant and everyone else that was over there to get the wheelbarrows and shovels out. We really appreciate you guys for doing that. And we're going to continue to maintain those properties because we actually have a line on one of the local landscape companies who donates those wood chips for us whenever they are in the area doing some work. So that's at no cost to the neighborhood besides the volunteer work. And in other wood chip work news, we have a very extended project going on down at Halsey Park where we got 2 loads of wood chips dumped earlier this year. And we had the path down to the water recreated with a layer of wood chips and then letting that settle. The guys will be out later this week spreading the rest of that pile. It'll be flattened into, there was a whole area that wasn't growing any grass because it was shaded, but it was still mostly on the flat part of the park. And so the area that won't grow grass is getting a round area of wood chips where we hope to be placing some picnic furniture in the future. And then we're wood chipping underneath of the existing picnic table, and then an entire another layer of wood chips all the way down to the water. So I love it because I happen to live next door and I see families and their kids running up and down the trail now and not being a muddy mess, which is really great. But it also arrests the erosion. And there was an actual gully running down the side of the hill that was just open dirt and mud. And so that's fixed now. So we're really happy about it. So that's something that and you can see in the picture that it's actually a visible path where it was 61. It wasn't before. Okay, so the renovation of the landscaping and traffic circle at Porter and Cedar Park. We relocated the native flowering plants that were in that circle that I know so many of us love very much to other Admiral Heights properties. And the reason that we had to do that, I saw that there was a chat comment already about that. For those of you who didn't see the Facebook comments about it, the reason we had to do that is because it was not only difficult to maintain because our landscape companies didn't know what were native flowers versus what were grass and weeds. That's the truth, God's honest truth, point 1. Point 2, it was growing too high for the safety and visibility in the traffic circle for the traffic around it. So 18 inches is all it can be, and it was all the way up here plus 36. So that was a real reason that we had to do something about it, and it was something that this board really struggled with. And the solution that's there now is very low maintenance and low cost. And since managing costs of our landscaping is something that we're gonna have to continue to contend with on these properties, the solution that's there now will be lower cost over time. As it fills in completely, it'll be less weeding. And then those plants that we love, that for the pollinators, were moved to other properties through a volunteer effort in the neighborhood. And that's the backstory, that's why we did that. And then finally, we reestablished something, but I wait for you to finish the whole. Okay, if you would like to comment on that, well, I want to comment on the purple. Yes, okay. I was the one who put in all the pollinator plants along with volunteers several years ago. And I was a little dismayed to find out the day before that on the cultivating board, we're going to take all these out. And which was kind of disheartening because I was away and I couldn't do anything about it. And was not consulted at all. The plants that were put in are non-native, a lot of terrible plants. Terrible insects or examples, because you don't want people to plant and not everywhere. I'm not quite sure what the others are there, but and then the costs are always very concerned. I'd like to know how much all that costs. The entire budget for removing and replacing the traffic circle was $2,900. And is that not outlandish to you? It is not outlandish. Well, I used to work for a landscape farm, and I can tell you that business is probably about $300 for the plant. Probably a half day of labor. So it was actually, the removal was quite significant, and so it was a full day of labor. And so, and I definitely appreciate your comments, and I appreciate the spirit in which you're sharing them. I understand that this was really challenging for people because a lot of us were really attached to those plants. They had to come out from that spot for safety. It seems like we could have done it before. I'm sure. And the other, to your point, we had a plan with the contractor to do that project 2 months later than it was actually done. And he called and had an opening to be able to do it sooner than was planned. And in a very split decision, the board decided, go ahead and get it done. And so we did not have the time that we originally thought we would have to coordinate with you and to do other things to get feedback from the board. We didn't. And also, in terms of the rezoning, I'd like to point out that they put some plants that they pulled on, they put them in a pretty dark, so it's not becoming the sun. And no one's water. And so rezoning makes it sound like they're taking residents out there, which they're not. And then I think the other, I'm not sure if it's a plan by all the stars, that's two things that always, they're just sitting there. And no one claimed the houses, yes, that's right. We did let everyone know in the neighborhood that they were available and no one claimed them. So they are going to go out with the garbage. That's true. And I appreciate your comments. We're going to move on. So the last update for the community properties is that we now have oyster gardening going on at UDOT with the participation of a volunteer, Sarah Holden, and her family. She's the point of contact for the neighborhood association and helping to garden those oysters. So go down there and check it out and take the kids, show them about the project. And if you have any questions or comments about it, you can get in touch with Sarah by email, and she will be happy to meet people down there and talk about the oyster project. It's something that a lot of people in the neighborhood are really excited about. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to the proposed budget for this year. And this is our one point of business today that we need a vote of the membership on. And it's the budget for 2022. So this slide shows proposed revenue in two scenarios. And both of these scenarios are exactly the same as the 2021 budget year that you all approved last year for where we are right now, with one change. We project that the advertising revenue is going to go up significantly by about $500 for next year. We can expect that revenue because we unexpectedly already got it this year. You've seen the newsletters, the advertising this year because of me and Martha actually paid for the printing costs for the entire newsletter. And so the one change in the proposed revenue for 2022, we increased the advertising from $250 to $750. Everything else remains the same. These are the base case is what we're calling it. This is non-discretionary spending. It is what we have to spend to keep the properties up and what we have to do for legal reasons like insurance, et cetera. And we'll talk about expenses in a minute. The better case is almost where we're at right now for 2021. It's assuming 50% of the neighborhood joins the association. So right now, you heard John say earlier, we're at about 40% of the neighborhood has joined, and we still have a couple months left in the year. And so this better case scenario of 50% of the neighborhood paying their membership dues, the kayak racks full, that would get us to this $15,481 in revenue. And we believe that that is a very reasonable projection for next year, because there's no reason to think that something will change significantly from this year to next year on the revenue side. Does anyone have any questions about this slide before I move on? Yes, ma'am.
How do you get people to join? Are they, I just joined today and I don't know anything you're doing, but how are you trying to get your people to join, Is it from, I joined because of the newsletter.
That's great. And the newsletter is a big reason that people join. It comes out twice a year and we get the biggest bump in our membership at the spring newsletter. And then folks who haven't joined yet, by the time they get the fall newsletter, most of them join. We also get people who join when they move into the neighborhood. They do a Google search and say what's going on, and they learn about the association and they reach out and they join at that point. And then in the past, people have joined because of community events like the block party or a tailgate or the Easter egg hunt, etc. And those were put on hold last year. And so we did struggle. I think we did great, frankly, to get to the 40% of the neighborhood as members. But it is a struggle to get the word out when we don't have the in-person events. So those are coming back. And I do expect that to have a positive impact on additional members in the neighborhood, because we can get out and see each other and do things together. It makes the value of being part of the association more obvious and more likely that people will join.
Yeah, well, if you posted a sign said this is you know, join the association month or something, and you put a sign and posted it at the entrance, maybe people would call in or email in and do it, and you can pull the sign out every 6 months.
Okay, well, thank you for the suggestion. It'll be in the minutes. We'll take a look at it. Yes, sir.
Have you ever had 50% membership in the last few years?
No, sir.
I didn't think so. So what?
This is our aspirational goal. In the last 2 years, we have not. This is what we're going to get back to.
People are home more now.
In the past, that was how many years? 6 years ago or a little bit longer? You remember?
Siobhan,
Yes.
at one point we sent out a postcard that had the
Right.
QR code. What was the influx from that?
So that actually happened before I joined the board. And so maybe someone else could speak to it, but we did have a budget line for paid mailing, like actually sending a postcard out.
Yeah, because we had a QR code that just said,
Yes.
scan it. I'm just thinking right now that maybe this is the venue for this, but now that after COVID, everybody's used to like scanning these menus and we all are kind of more familiar with them.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that would help with like an influx of members.
I think that's a great point. And we still have the end of year push for membership and for membership at the beginning of next year. So we have the budget for mailings. We have $200 set aside for paid mailings out to the neighborhood. That's only definitely.
Yes, so I've been in the neighborhood for years and I'll get the information on it, and I'll forget today, like every once in a while, and I'll find it later. But is there like a way that you can have neighbors just like renew every year automatically, or? is that
Yes,
a possibility?
we do have PayPal now, and we
Okay.
have an option to checkbox in PayPal where you can automatically renew your dues.
Okay.
And we also keep an email list of everyone who's ever been a member, and we do send out an email to that saying time to renew your dues. And then I think there are 1 or 2 reminders that go after that initial email. Yes.
I belong to a neighborhood association, had a directory with the name, address,
Yeah.
I'd be willing to help anybody that's interested in that, I understand and proxy issues that part of it, shut down, I can see both that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we have the member list up on the website right now, and renovating our website is a whole other conversation to make it more user-friendly. It's something we're talking about and don't have the bandwidth for right at the moment. But it is a privacy issue, and there is a way to have a login so that only members can get in to see the directory, but that requires a different level of website design than what we have right now. Okay, so if you would like to shoot me an email and stay on the list as a volunteer for, getting that together at some point in the future, I would welcome a help. Because I know that other people have requested the directory as well, but it really is, it's not great to put that information out where everybody can see it.
My last name, we did it, it's just like a whole paper that takes together.
Oh, it was a hard copy.
Then we get it out after you.
Oh, okay. Well, that has less safety concerns. So if you're suggesting that we should do a hard copy once a year and hand it out, then that's something we could definitely consider. We really scaled back on printing, but I think that in the event that it was a directory and helpful for people, might be worth thinking about. You would have to opt in, so it would probably take us a 6-month cycle to get everybody opted in.
A good way to get, people show up and take one name of the finish, right, check out, you get it, and then you get your.
And get your directory. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Yes, Sean?
Membership was also higher when we had more. And I think there's a direct correlation. And we thought it valued, whether these letters, people see value.
Thank you. Martha and I were just discussing that. So there were some cuts of printing over the years, some cutbacks for the budget reasons to go to 2 a year, and there were some concerns about having enough content for 4 a year. But I was remarking to her this afternoon as we were setting up about how we really want, like, the world's moving so fast now, and you're doing communications, doing stuff that's relevant and timely right now of the moment, and you have to be top of mind for people or you're going to be forgotten. And so it's not just online communications, it's also these sorts of things. So your comment is well timed.
And it seems like probable, so might as well put it in.
That's the new thing we're excited about, that now we have more options with the newsletter because of the work that they've done. Yes.
I know at some of our previous meetings, and I think Scott brought it up, trying to make our community a special designated neighborhood where the county collects it, the taxes, like Hillsmere, St. Clair. So it's not an option that you pay to do. And I think you had done some figures and said we would actually end up ahead of the game, even with the fees they charge, and they kind of just dropped, and we never heard any more as to why we didn't look into that more.
It was a proposal that was tabled while they were doing more research and looking for more information. And as I understand it, Scott, please feel free to speak to this. The law actually changed since that discussion happened, and I don't think it's an option for us now. Is that your understanding, Scott?
It's an option, the threshold is much higher now.
Threshold is higher?
But one of the things that we committed to, and that we said at the last couple of meetings, was we didn't want to have that discussion during a time where everybody wouldn't be able to participate in an open forum meeting like this. So our last 2 membership meetings were just web meetings, which are kind of one directional. It's hard to just have people raise their hands. So we said we were going to table the discussion until we could get back together and meet. At the same time, while that happened, the county did raise the standard. So it used to be a simple majority, and now it's a super majority.
everybody
in the
has to.
neighborhood that would be required to make that type of change. So when we
I
go
think
back
it
to
should
the
be
discussion,
optional,
I think there's a conversation about whether or not that's a viable path.
I think it should be optional.
It's a much higher.
People don't like things in their text.
What percentage is the super majority?
It would be 2/3, isn't that right?
I'm pretty sure it's
66%. So we've given that we don't have that yet as, membership in the association, so again, like it was in the past, that we would have to really work hard to build the support in order to do that. And, everyone here knows this, you're members, you pay your dues, you're supporting these properties and helping us keep them up, and not everyone in the neighborhood is, and yet they're still benefiting as well from the water privilege neighborhood that we live in. So it is going to continue to be an ongoing tension. And as Scott said, now that we're getting back into being able to be in person and have full discussions about things like this, we may be able to get some momentum around it. But he had to step away from it. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I actually think you could probably get people to join by telling them that, but putting in their taxes, I don't think people like that.
No, some don't.
Yeah, but I think that you could encourage them saying, you know, we make everything beautiful and why can't you give us $40 a year? And I really think you could guilt them into it.
All right. Okay, well, we'll move on from, this is the proposed revenue side, so we're gonna move on now to the proposed expenses side. And again, it's two scenarios. So there's the base case scenario and then the better case scenario. And the reason that we propose two scenarios is so that everyone in the membership understands that we have to hustle to get that 33% of membership, just so we can keep the lights on at the dock, so we can pay the liability insurance, and so we can mow the lawn. That is the bottom line, and keep our post office box, right? So that is the bottom line of keeping the association running, is our base case budget. Anything more than that is discretionary in the sense that we can invest in the properties, we can do community projects, and we can expand on different interests that the membership identifies through the membership survey and through other ways of sending us feedback. So just so everybody's clear, base case, better case. Yes.
Last thing is, why don't you do a fundraiser? Why are there no fundraisers?
Well, that is a great point. And in the past, there have been some fundraisers around very specific items, like replacing the dock at Williams. So all of these folks up here on this board are volunteers, work as well. And running fundraisers takes a lot of time and organization. And so we definitely are open to the idea that if any one of our wonderful members would like to lead a fundraising effort or a membership drive, et cetera, we are collaborative and excited about having that volunteer effort. But we are also working within some limitations on our volunteer time as a board. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, so we're gonna go here. This is the base case budget, non-discretionary base. And you'll see here that there's the lights, BGE is the lights down at the dock, so it stays lit at night. Mowing and landscaping is for all of our properties for the whole year, $3,500. That's $500 more than we spent last year, or was approved for the budget last year, because we know that costs continue to go up on that. The dock replacement fund is a long-term savings that we're putting in $750 a year, and so is the boat club, so that in another 15 years, when we need to make a big spend and replace that infrastructure, we're going to have a bank account and not be dependent on running a fundraiser or running around with the cat out and asking everybody to help. So this is planning for the future. Facilities maintenance and repair is a backup fund for when things that are ours and we have to fix them are need fixed. And then our insurance cost is one of the highest expenses we have, because we have properties, and with properties comes liability. And then we also have a board, and we have to have board members' liability insurance as well. So we have actually shopped around. We have a really good rate on that insurance. If any of you think otherwise and you know a guy, come talk to me. But we're pretty happy with the quote that we have on the insurance. And then the administration costs, internet, to keep the website going, memberships. We are a member of the Severn River Association. That's something that we've always done, and that's what that $55 is. Membership mailings, like the postcards Maggie mentioned, $200. Office supplies, $100. I think we've spent maybe 30 of it this year. I don't expect to exceed 100. The PO box cost went up from $100 to $146, so we had to up that budget line. And then the newsletter printing, we have here for $900, and because of the offset of advertising, we actually expect that to be less, but we have to have it there because we don't ever want to fully stop doing the newsletter. If for some reason ad income didn't come in, we would dip into our reserve to make sure we did at least 2 newsletters a year. So that's why you see the $900 there. Now that bottom line budget leaves $51 for social events. And that means we do social events as volunteers, donations, potlucks, etc. But we don't have funds for them. So that's the base budget. The next budget, the better case budget, has everything that I just discussed is the same, except mowing and landscaping is increased to $5,000. And there's social gathering funds for about $2,500, which would allow us to get a food truck to come to an event, or get an ice cream truck to come by for the kids on July 4th instead of bringing ice cream from, the store. There are different ways we can do different things and spend a little bit more money on social events, get the block party going again, stuff like that. So that would be up to, right? It would be authorized up to that amount, only if the revenue comes in to pay for it. We'll never deficit spend or spend money we don't have. We only spend what money comes in. So those are the two proposed budgets, base case and better case. And then we're entertaining a motion by the treasurer to approve and to allow this board to operate within those budgets. And so before we ask for the motion or a second or vote, I want to know if anyone here has any questions about the two budget scenarios. Yes, Sean.
So this, the better budget doesn't kick in until you hit that 50 number, not 49%, not 48%, it's 50%.
Well, it's actually the budget line. It's a dollar amount. It's not tied to membership. Because for instance, if we get a bunch more advertising income that was more than we expected, we would have the funds to offset additional membership. We could still do social gatherings. We could still have that extra money. So the budget for income is based on a number of a goal we have for membership. But there are other ways like fundraisers and like advertising that we can bring in that money. What we can't do is spend money we don't. So it would only be after we reach the level of income that's actually in our bank account that we would authorize expenditures for social gatherings or for additional landscape work or for reinvestment in something like furniture at one of the parks or something like that. All right.
So I lived in the neighborhood for 4 years, and I have a property in Illinois in a neighborhood where the median home price is maybe 300,000. I'm guessing here it's 455. Well, if our homeowners who were $110 a year, how do you come to $40 at water privilege and it not be mandated?
Okay, so I'll take the second question first. We can't mandate it because it's not written in the bylaws and it's not a homeowners association. It's a voluntary association in our charter with the state. And so we could rally the troops and change that charter, which would be a challenging thing to do. So that's first. Second, there was discussion before I joined the board about raising the dues because it's for households, not for individual members, and then COVID happened. And so the rate stayed flat. And so we could certainly entertain a discussion in the course of the rest of this year about increasing the dues, let's say to $50. I don't think, well, not everyone in our neighborhood has fully recovered from the pandemic yet, nor has their income. And it was our judgment that it was good to leave it flat for one more year and see how we come out of 2022 and then go from there. But I welcome that observation.
It's not even one basis point of home.
I know, yeah, and we still only have 40% of the neighborhood paying. So what we don't know is the dollar amount what keeps people from joining, or is it just that there's no point to them joining from there if they don't see a value in it? And I don't know the answer to that. And we're probably going to try to get at that in the survey that we're going to do this year and ask some questions about people's perceptions. All right, with that, if there aren't any other questions, I will entertain a motion by the treasurer. So moved, John.
Andre, you're on mute.
Someone else can make the motion, right?
Anybody first?
I'll make the motion.
You can't, you're running.
I'd like to make a motion. Motion,
Thank you, Grant. Okay, you have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion? Yes, have it. Thank you very much. With that, I will stop talking, and I would like to welcome Alderman Fred Mayo up to share with us some updates from City Hall and take some of your questions. You will, after Fred's done, I will come back if there are other questions about the association and what we're doing. I'm happy to entertain those, but he'll have the floor now for the next little while.
Good evening, everybody.
Fred?
I'm Fred Payon, for those that don't know me. I think I need almost everybody here. 6 feet away from everybody. There are two items that I think are of interest to the neighborhood that have occurred since last we met in the spring. And they've actually both come up in the last week or two. The first item that I think affects the neighborhood is ADU legislation. Does anybody know what an ADU is? It's accessory housing unit. What that is a secondary, usually a secondary building on one's property that is used as a residence, not necessarily by the property owner. As a matter of fact, usually it's not by the property owner, it's by somebody that he rents to, he or she rents to. We voted last night to allow these, along with 9 amendments, one of which was allow an ADU to be a short-term rental. That is, could in effect be used as an Airbnb. There were a number of items. I ended up voting against this because one amendment to me was a absolute game stopper. That is that the original bill or ordinance allowed or required that there be an off-street parking, basically off-street parking for people that lived in an accessory dwelling unit. Each owner was required to provide one off-street parking unit. To me, while we do not have the parking issues yet here in Admiral Heights, it's a luxury that I think we all cherish, and I, for one, really wanted to keep that. I mean, it was, I just don't understand why anybody would have voted in favor of waiving that requirement. What that means is that not only may you or your next door neighbor build a accessory dwelling unit, they don't have to worry about parking. They can park in front of your house, their house. And I don't think, I don't like that. I don't think that's right. There were other issues involved, environmental, trash collection, water usage, and other environmental matters that I don't particularly care for. I can live with it, but the parking thing was what ultimately made me go the other way on it. It passed by I think it was either 6-3 or 7-2 vote. I mean, in fact, I was pretty sure it was going to pass anyway, so my vote really wasn't going to matter that much. At any rate, the good news is that these buildings still have to meet the zoning requirements. They can't build it right up against the property line, or right on the street. There's certain setback requirements, certain building code requirements all will apply. Not all ADUs are separate buildings. It could be somebody's basement. And to be honest, I don't really care much about those. I just, add into that possibility of there being used as an Airbnb. I had concerns about that, but I ended up actually voting for that amendment because, frankly, I'd rather have occupants of the ADU only there on the weekends than there all the time.
Were there any rules in there that said how many people could be in those?
I'm sorry.
Were there any rules as to how many people could be in those
Well,
buildings or accessories? Because I know when you rent,
they can't be more than 850 square feet. So, you know, if you want to put 12 people in there, I suppose, maybe you could. But there are regular zoning and other requirements, housing requirements to go along with that. And I don't think there would be, at least theoretically, a huge number of people would be allowed to live in any of them. They're meant for one or two at most. That brings up another issue, and that's enforcement. To be honest, for a lot of the rules the city has, well, we don't do a great job of enforcement, to put it mildly. In some cases, some of the environmental rules, some of the zoning. It's not that we don't try. We just don't have enough people to do it. But are there any questions that anybody has about these? Oh, and there was also a grandfathering clause that everybody that has one of these already automatically will be granted a license. And I really don't have any problem with that. The idea, I mean, my opposition wasn't to try to close anybody down. I just don't really like the idea of a whole lot more of these things popping up. Now, if you have a big lot and there's plenty of room for this, and you've got plenty of parking and plenty of other things, more power to you in my book. But that's not typical, particularly in Admiral Heights. Now, there are other parts of my ward, Wardor, a number of lots in West Annapolis, particularly maybe some in Germantown, Homewood, but I think of all three of my major neighborhoods in the ward, well, in Clay Street, I think Admiral Heights, I think it's probably least desirable for Admiral Heights, but it is what it is, so we'll make the best of it. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm friends, Chrissy Hall, I'm at the circle. I have three things. One is,
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing.
I have like three things for the city. One is, we keep seeing that they're clear cutting and then developing. And you can see that on Taylor Avenue. It looks like it happened over public storage. And then, of course, the Quiet Waters. They just went in, developers clear cut, and then they start building the houses. There was also a lot of trees that came down in Admiral Heights, you know, not only from the tornado, but I mean, last week walking around, they were just chopping trees down all the time. Even on Cedar Park, there was big, you know, pine that was coming down. What can the city do about this? How can we get ahead of the fact? I mean, I've been to council meetings to try to save trees and save 2 on West Street, but the velocity is happening so fast that they're coming in and taking all these trees down. And it doesn't seem like anybody's getting fined. There's like no permit. It's just, you know.
Well, that's part of the city's inability to enforce its own regulations and its own laws at times. I don't really think, generally speaking, developers or private property owners come in and just cut everything down. I would disagree with you that happens often.
What
But it
happened
does
on
happen,
Taylor
that
then?
it happens at all is an issue in my book, and it shouldn't happen. I don't know what to say, but yeah, no, it's not supposed to happen. And yes, there are laws against doing that and regulations against doing that. Typically, well, not typically, but the times you read about things like that happening in the paper, it's usually because the city has been reactive, not proactive. And they come in after the fact and, you know, throw a little fine down on the developer, which even if it's a lot of money to most of us, this could end up being just pocket change to some of those folks.
Okay, so the answer is we can't do anything, but they're just.
Can't do anything, we can enforce the law.
city can report it, can't you?
I didn't say we
But
can't
it's too
do
late.
anything.
I mean, like Taylor Avenue,
What do you want me
right
to
by
say?
the police station, they just came in and knocked it all.
I can actually speak to that if you'd
Oh,
like.
that'd be great.
Yeah, so my name's Kat Marucci again. I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker Church Circle. One of my colleagues, actually, his name is Brian Jacobs, and his name is on that. That's going to be developed into something called Terracing Station. There have been expensive plans that have been laid out, so yeah, you are correct. They cleared out a lot of trees, but you have to see that they're also planning to replant a lot of those trees as well. If you would like some more details about that, I'd be happy to put you in touch with him directly. I'm not directly connected to that development project. But if you'd really like to talk about it a little bit more, I'm happy to connect you.
Yeah, it's not an answer to say to pull down a 20 to 30-year-old tree and to put up a seedling. That's just, I mean, in the climate change conversation, that's just not even an answer.
Well,
at
and
this
then
point.
you
So
also-
it's about getting ahead of, I don't want to see, great, you're going to plant a tree. I don't think the city should approve a plan that calls for a clear cut to put the trees up. I mean, we've lost so much canopy in the last 4 years.
One of the other things that's going on there is, from my understanding, and, bear with me a little bit, is that there are going to be some power lines that are moving because of the hotel that's going in there. So that may have something to do with why those trees were cleared as well. It may not just be the development project itself. So, but that was a little helpful.
Right now, I'm calling for questions about ADUs, which is what I've been talking about. I'll be happy
Oh,
to answer any
I thought
question
it
at
was
the
a horrible
end.
question. 'Cause I have-
Yeah,
Yeah. Fred, I agree with you 100% on the parking issue. I think one of the attractions in this neighborhood is that you don't have all those cars lined up, and which is, besides the fact that it's a frustration not being able to park your car, it's also, people walk the areas, and it's very unsafe if you can't see. But now you can see as you walk, that there's a couple of cars parked, off street, on the street. You can see what's going on. But if you make it so that these people can put these cars anywhere they want, it's going to look like a Navy football game every day.
yeah. Well,
So I would say that that's probably going to lower the property values, actually. But this is a neighborhood that people are attracted to. Actually, not so much because the houses are so elaborate, but because of the neighborhood, the feeling in the neighborhood, that you're really in a neighborhood.
well, look, my response and my negative vote on that and on the ordinance as a whole wasn't so much for what's there now, it's for what I see in the future.
Exactly,
And I don't like it.
exactly.
I was shocked, the older person from downtown, where there is no parking, voted in favor. I don't get
Some
it.
people
but
think any building is good building. It's
That's the
wrong.
way it goes.
It's wrong.
Are there any other questions about ADUs? Okay, yeah, I'll take all questions in just a moment. The other item that the mayor today and the city manager asked me to talk about was the sidewalk on Cedar Park. Now, any number of us have been looking to put in a sidewalk for if nothing else, the safety of the children walking to and from school. We've been trying to do that for 10 years. Now, just because we were looking to put in a sidewalk doesn't mean that, I know in my case at least, I was looking to put in the sidewalk that is apparently being proposed. But having said that, the mayor and the city manager are very conscious of the fact that there are a lot of people who don't agree with the how and the where the sidewalk is to be put in. There are probably a number of things that you don't really know about it. The city within the next few weeks will be actually extending what they already have to the entire length of what the proposed sidewalk will be. Now, hold your horses, don't get too excited if you don't like what's down there right now. If you don't like it, I don't blame you, neither do I. But they want to put the whole thing out first and see, let people get used to seeing how it works, what doesn't work, as the case might be. And then at the end of roughly 6 months or so, they will have a public meeting, everybody can be heard, and then decide what to do in the final analysis. One of the alternatives is the possibility that, hey, putting a sidewalk in there just isn't really feasible. And it'll stay the way it is. That's a distinct possibility. The mayor, and I heard this for the first time today, would like to put parking on the same side as the sidewalk curb, because he thinks, one of the reasons he thinks it will be safer that way for walkers, people who will use the sidewalk. What they want to do is put in, let's see, there'll be the street, a curb, a small grass area, probably a foot or two wide, and then the sidewalk, and then the front yards as we know them now. On the same side of the street where the path is kind of staked off at the moment, right above Rickover Court going toward Wendell. He wanted me to get a reaction. And believe me, I gave him an earful of what, because I've gotten an earful about how bad it is and all these other things. And I don't really disagree, because I don't think there are very many people here or in the community that wouldn't like to see a sidewalk making it safer for walkers on Cedar Park. But whether we want that sidewalk yet is perhaps a totally different question. And a number of people here, Sean, I know you have very strong feelings about the way it is now. I don't disagree with you. That's not when I said, please, please, please put a sidewalk in, that isn't what I had in mind. And I don't think there are many people here that really think that as it is the greatest idea in the world. Now, one of the couple things you should know, we will lose parking there on one side of the street. The street travel part of the street, no matter what we do, will be a bit narrower there. Now, that's not the worst thing in the world, because, again, many of us here who are familiar with the traffic problems on that part of Cedar Park, we want to slow traffic down. And this will help do that. No, you're not going to be able to go down there. Well, actually, cars, we found out, don't really go as fast as people think they do, but it ought to be, people should be going 20 miles an hour down that hill, and before you go back up to Halsey. And people, the average speed I think was 22 or 23 miles an hour, much to my surprise. Speed limit's 25. That's why it's not feasible to put a speed camera in there. Simply not going to catch a lot of people speeding. That's not the problem. People don't drive carefully there, more than anything. And that's what we have to look out for. Now, if the street is more narrow, I think they will slow down and drive a lot more carefully than they do right now. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a big wide open street, but if you had, if it were 7 or 8 feet more narrow, I don't think you'd be having people from as many residents complaining about the manner in which people drove along that road. But I mean, that's the idea behind it. So, yes.
But I fundamentally disagree. I love you like to run it as stepchild, but I fundamentally disagree. The problem with that corner is it is already a choke point. That's what makes it a problem. People come down the hill, you probably perceive that they are faster than you are, and I'll freely admit that. I've walked that street. They do seem like they're driving faster than 20 miles an hour to me. However, because of that, the way it curves and the dual side parking, it is a choke point, and that is what makes it a problem. You put a sidewalk in there and make it even narrower, it's even more of a choke point. This isn't your problem, it's the mayor's problem. This is downtown bike trail version 2.0. It's the same problem. Same problem. I'm not putting on you, but that's the fundamental problem. It is a choke point. And the sidewalk is only going to make it more of a choke point. The sidewalk is permanent design.
Well, this is what people downtown need to hear. Sean?
Yeah, in a way, you're correct. Narrowing roads makes people slow down, but not curvy roads. What you've done is you've made a dangerous curve a more dangerous curve by narrowing. And so when you have a straightaway like on Cedar Park Road in front of Germantown Elementary, if you want to narrow that to slow people down, 100% correct. When you have a curvy road like it is right now, and not only that, but put cars on the other side, you just created a blind curve. Now you have a blind dangerous curve. And so it's not a good idea. And if they're going to build the sidewalks, they need to be in the right of way, in people's front yards. It's already in the plans, it was in the plans when they built the houses, but it just wasn't done. And that's what the city needs to do. And when we asked for sidewalks, for 12 years, we were walking our kids to school. That's what we were asking for. We weren't asking for our roads to be narrow, and people, quite frankly, some people are going to lose parking. That road is going to be full of cars every night because there's one house on that street that has 11 cars.
That has what?
11 cars.
Who has 11 cars?
On the Cedar Park Road. But what I'm saying is that road, that one house alone will fill half of Cedar Park Road. And I took pictures during the Navy Air Force game, and I had to actually back up because cars were on both sides of the road. I had to back up into someone's driveway. It's not wide enough for two cars to even pass when you have cars parked on both sides of the street. So it's a nightmare.
Well, there are cars parked on both sides now.
Right.
All the time.
wider.
And we're going to actually eliminate parking on one side.
When you eliminate parking on one side, you're not even gonna have enough room for two cars to pass. Especially when you have one entire side full of.
You're going to take, so the cars that you're going to eliminate, you're replacing it with a sidewalk.
After 54 more days, I can assure you, I'm not going to be doing anything.
Not you, Fred, but.
Not that I'm counting down, but
It's simply replacing the dual-side cars with a sidewalk. Not you, nothing is being gained, and I would argue things are being worse.
Sure, the road's.
There, more questions. So I spoke with a project manager the other day, I don't like meeting tonight, and they are very interested in getting all of these projects for and against. And I think what I've heard from a lot of people is what Tom said, we always wanted a sidewalk there. We have deep concerns about physical design of the sidewalk. So what she told me was, the width that is lined out in the places where it is for parking, there are a couple of places where there's paint for parking around that terrible blind curve is 6 feet wide from the curve out to the paint. The sidewalk would be 5 feet. And then the parking would be allowed on one side. So what she's saying is that the lanes of travel by their residents would remain the same as it is now with parking on both sides. One side would be sidewalk, 1 foot less than the 6 feet is needed for parking, and the other side would remain parking. So I just wanted to clear that up, that that's their understanding, and so that's something to make specific comments on when you write in to her and during the public meeting that they're gonna hold. But that's their understanding, so they don't understand it the same way that you just described it as losing that space. I just wanted to clarify that before the conversation kept going, and then I also want to be mindful of everyone's time to get all their comments in. So please share with Fred what you have and let him get from one person to the next so we can keep going. Thank you.
the mayor also wanted me to say that nothing is going to be done without it being presented to you folks. Whether or not, what he didn't say is that you have to approve it, but he did say that once we're through with what the Works considers to be a trial period. We will have a public hearing after that, and everyone will have the right to be heard at that public hearing before the city finalizes anything. So nothing's going to be done. I mean, remember the days of, let's get it done right now so we can have this done by the school year? Forget it. Nothing happens that quick in government in general, and certainly not in the city of Annapolis, regrettably. I've also made that mistake before, so you're not alone if you thought that the city could act that quickly on something like a sidewalk. It's a pretty major expense, and we haven't budgeted in the CIP part of the budget, but we don't have it overall for any particular year. So that there's some financial issues. One of the problems with putting the sidewalk entirely on the resident's property is that in some cases, a major part of somebody's front yard is going to be destroyed over this. I didn't quite understand that, but that's what I've heard over and over again. I'm a lawyer, not an engineer. I don't really understand why a 5-foot sidewalk would ruin 25 or 30 or 40 feet of the front lawn, but I've got to go by what I'm told. So, yes, ma'am, next to the last, yes, ma'am, yes.
I'm not going to speak to the issue.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I say I'm not going to speak to the issue for that reason because of my voice in the mask. But may I give this to you rather than burn your ear on the phone? You'll have it in front of you. Some of the major issues, possibly by not going on to our property, is because that's where the water line, the gas line, and the sewer line all come in. Which means they have to relocate the meters and maybe 5 feet of pipe for each one of them.
Okay.
And that's kind of, that fits into the right of eminent domain in that sense.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will pass this on.
Anybody want to know what's in it?
I'm sorry.
Cedar Park Road is basically the Route 50 for Admiral Heights. And I'm home during the day. I'm not working necessarily at a computer, but I'm out walking the dog or I'm in the yard. Or I'm even trying to come home Saturday night from a performance. And I'm coming around the curve, which you're talking about. It's 9:15 at night. I can see this fellow coming down the hill, and he's coming down the hill. He has flamed the center of the road. And I'm thinking to myself, there are cars over here and there are stanchions. There's cars over here, and I'm trying to move over as much as I can. And finally, it almost was a game of chicken, not on my part, but on the other person's part. There seems to be a mentality, and I think it's the younger generation, where they get mom and dad's car, and they are out, and they are about, and get out of my way, driving down this road. And as I pointed out too, I'm coming up the road and put my signal on. I have to pull into my driveway on the left-hand side. And guess what? I'm watching my rearview mirror. And here comes somebody. Turn signal on, slow down, getting ready to make my turn, and they pass me on the driver's side. Had I not been watching AARP safe driving class, I mean, I would have, you know,
I really wish there was something the city could do about idiots behind the wheel, but that's probably beyond their.
some famous person said you can't get stupid. And that's exactly what was going on. But I think I'm trying to put it.
Okay.
Some pretty good things.
All right.
Things that people that don't get it, but live by, despite, and consider, et cetera. That they don't take into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
The first one that asked, what's the slide rule? I'm gonna punch in the nose.
I really don't know how to use it, but I know it's not.
Carmen,
Right, understanding that even the temporary sidewalks is a cost, could we possibly have that community forum prior to the nightmare experiment that's going to happen for 6 months to discuss and actually bring in a traffic engineer that could, a traffic engineer, not a city engineer, who is not a traffic engineer, but a traffic engineer who could discuss and talk to us intelligently about how something like this could possibly work before we put it up for 6 months.
well, I have talked to an engineer that lives in the community that says it won't work. There's no way that it can be done legally in compliance with the state rules, state requirements.
And why are they
But having
doing
said
so?
that, I'm happy to do that, but we just now gotten a traffic engineer on staff, I'm told, or at least on contract, which is what we've had in my, maybe all but the first year I was on the council.
It just seems frivolous to put this experiment down when there's so much opposition to it. And have us suffer, because that is my only way in and out to my house. That street. For us to suffer for 6 months, only to then have the community meeting for discussion on if an engineer is going to fail us.
Well, look, they seem to think that there's benefit to doing this for 6 months. I disagree, but I'm, as an older person, by law, I'm not allowed to tell department heads what to do or order them to do anything. If the city says they're gonna do it, I can object, I'll give them all kinds of good reasons why it's a waste of time. That's about it.
And you mentioned that you have public meetings
Yes.
and people voice their opinion.
Okay.
Well, you've seen the mayor go ahead and do things without even consulting anybody.
Well, they could, but they don't usually do that. And certainly in an election year, the mayor's not wouldn't come out and say that. I mean, nobody would. I'm not, he's actually been our friend in this project, so I'm not, please don't misunderstand, I'm not being critical. At least I don't intend to be critical. Believe me, I question. Okay.
Everybody, Fred mentioned it a little while ago, he's only got 50 days left or so, but he's in 14 years, so love his politics, hate them. I think we should thank him for 14 years.
I do have one question of both Scott and Carmen. They're the two people running for my seat.
I tried to save you, Fred, Jesus. I'm saving you.
I just have one question. You guys sure you want to do this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. I feel what Maggie said. We all appreciate your service. And, all right, so actually, there were at least 2 other people that had questions about the sidewalk project that Fred didn't get to. At least 2 others. Tanya, you had your hand up for a minute as well. Did you have something from an online chat that you wanted to put on the record for the notes?
Yeah, I can go back into the chat. I can just add these for the minutes. It says, in the 1600 block of Cedar Park Road, do you want a sidewalk or ample parking for multifamily dwellings? The comment was that 1607 Cedar Park has 11 cars.
Okay, well, that clarifies the Fred's question about which house it was.
Yeah.
1607, Cedar Park has 11 cars.
And then the final question is, if it was part of the original property lines to have sidewalks, then we need to use that footage. Narrowing the road is a terrible idea.
Thanks for adding those into the record. And I will repeat that we will be happy to convey the comments that we get here. They'll be in the minutes and we'll convey what we can to the project manager. But Jennifer's contact information is on Facebook, it's on our website, it's in this presentation, and she's the one handling the public comment process, both before they install the temporary components and after it's been installed for a little while. So I urge all of you, for and against the sidewalk project, to reach out to her, because it's important that Fred and then Scott or Karma hear your comments, but it's really important that the civilian, like city employee who's running it, hears those comments as well and is able to tabulate them, because right now we do hear a lot of opposition, but I've also heard in the neighborhood, some people are really for it, or what I found interesting, for giving it a try for a minute. I don't know. So I'm just saying, make sure that you write to Jennifer, and we will continue to put the information up on the Facebook page and by email whenever there's an opportunity for public comment as this thing goes forward, whether there are many or fewer of those. Yes, ma'am.
It's not a bilateral decision though. There's 3 options. The third is what she just talked about. It's already in the plan. So we need the city to comment on that one. It's not.
Sorry, what's already in the plan?
Meaning the house was already zoned, these houses were already zoned to have a sidewalk in front of them. So the city needs to answer to that.
Yes.
What would it take to put the sidewalk in exactly where it's supposed to be, which is not part of the street? So it's not a street, no street conversation. It's
You're
3
right.
options.
There is
that we
another
want
option
to-
there, and I'm glad you raised it so that everyone can hear this. We did have that presentation by DPW at our spring membership meeting, and they spoke to that exact issue about the expense that they project it would cost to actually cut into the front yards of people and then do what is called a cut back, which means that you can't have a very steep slope going right down to a sidewalk. You have to cut back at a smooth angle. And that would take a lot of these front yards that are very small. So they did talk about it in concept. They did not put a dollar number on it. Would it be a $2 million project and then a $20 million project? They didn't do that. And you're right that in considering all the options, that would be something that you would want to hear from them. And I urge you to write that into Jennifer and say, we want to hear the justification from a traffic engineer about what is going on in the street and how is this project actually going to come together for funding? Because that's the other component here, is it's the full permanent sidewalk is not fully funded at all. There's funding right now for this temporary part, and the expectation is to write a grant. The city writes a grant to get the funding for the permanent sidewalk. And that, as Fred mentioned, is not assigned to a specific year out in the future, 2022 or 2023. It's not even a known. And so there are a lot of unknowns about the development of this project. And asking great questions like that about what are the full range of options is going to be very important.
Okay, she's gonna read our minutes. And then we have to go back and do that.
Jennifer?
Yeah.
If I will share
Thank
the
you.
specific comments
Okay.
relevant to this topic with
Okay.
Jennifer. Yes,
Thank you.
that's something we will do. I won't make her read 4 pages or 8 pages of minutes.
Okay.
But I also urge you to write in, because they count up the number of comments from people and they actually put it together in a qualitative report that this is what we've heard from the neighborhood. And it does make a difference if you write.
Then we need to be more aggressive because I don't see my neighbors here and I live in Fifth Circle and we probably have, I don't know, 8 to 10 new children just in the last 2 years. So you're gonna have an influx of children just walking right out of Fifth Circle and right up that Cedar Park area. And none of them are here right now. She's got a separate one.
Okay. Well, it's okay. So yeah, there is an opportunity for community engagement there and for organizing around this. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your. Yeah, Sean.
I just want to add just a little context. The wheels of this are very slow. That traffic circle that we have at Cedar Park, Porter, and whatever, Sampson, it took 4 years to get that. So just know that it takes a long time for these things to happen. They're going to try a lot of experiments, but there's a reason for it. And so I will say that's the one good thing is that a lot of these things are temporary. So we will have plenty of opportunities to speak up everything from even grant, tackle the plantings that were put in there, all that stuff. So there'll be plenty of time to speak.
Thank you.
I think that we can.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. I'm just gonna run through really quickly with these upcoming events. So we are, thanks to Lauren's support, she's not able to be here tonight. She had to stay home with a sick kiddo, but she is going to be organizing the scarecrow making contest at the entrance to Cedar Park, on Cedar Park again, just like we did last year. Outdoor activity for the little kiddos. And so mark your calendars, 24th of October on Sunday. That'll be happening. And then we are bringing back the block party and cookout in Halsey Park, and it's scheduled for November 13th, 4 p.m. If anyone is moved to become a volunteer and help our party planning committee get this thing going and be a success, please tell any of us before you leave tonight or email us, contact us at info@Admiral Heights, tell me you want to be a volunteer.
Can I assume that there's not going to be a tailgate party this year?
We can't.
Not if I
get
say
it done. We can't, we missed the window on the games that are left, and we are not going to be able to do it this year. But I have discussed it with some of our colleagues up here, and we really wanted to have it for next year. So sorry about that, but block party is back, tailgate has to wait for another bit. Okay, keep on the lookout for your emails and Facebook, and maybe it'll be a mailer too, we're not sure yet, for our community membership survey. We did the first one last year, Joe Flasher managed it, and we got some really good input about what you all want to see us doing as an association and what you don't want to see us doing. And we're going to ask you to fill out those surveys again this year, and we'll report the results at the spring membership meeting. And it'll help inform where we put some of those discretionary funds. As long as we have success with our membership drive and we have the funds, that's what we'll use to direct the money. So please look out for that. Yes, sir.
Is that going to be emailed as well as Facebook?
It will be. Yes, sir. I know, I'm very limited use of it myself. Yes, it will be emailed through our email listserv officially from the association. So look out for that. And that is all I have here. So yes, sorry. The approval of our minutes from last time. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you're all still here. All right, so last March, the last membership meeting, we took minutes for that, as we always do, and they were posted on the website. They were in the link that you got for coming here tonight, and they were approved by our board. We read it through for accuracy, etc. And so we're asking for a consensus approval of those minutes by the membership that's here so that we can put them in the record. Can I get a motion? Patrick, second. Wendy, thank you. All approved? All in favor? Any opposed? None. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And with that, we will adjourn. And this lovely meeting.